Hello everyone, thank you for watching. My name is Emily with Chipped and Polished. I am so excited to share this piece with you today. I found this in a local shop and it was covered in thick black and white paint. It had the ugliest hardware, no offense to anyone who might like it. It had a mirror with it, so it was a great piece. Started off by removing the hardware because I was not going to keep that. To me, this hardware says like early 2000s. It looks like broken mirror pieces. It's just not my favorite. After that, removed the mirror, took off the braces that had come with it so I could paint just the frame. And I felt like this was a really cool detail. Once I had the mirror pieces all separated, I found a date and the maker's mark on there. After that, started cleaning again with awesome cleaner from the dollar store. Can't get cheaper than that. It's a really good cleaner for the money. Next up was actually one of my favorite parts, which was stripping all of that paint off. I used Clean Strip, and this is my new favorite stripping agent. It was so easy to work with. I did find out that I didn't need to let it sit very long. You need to work quickly with this stuff, but it works really well when you do. I also ended up doing 2 coats in the end since I had let it sit a little too long in the beginning. But again, it works super well once I kind of got the hang of it. And you can see what I mean here about it having dried out a little bit, but lesson learned there. And this is after a second application of it, it came off so smoothly. After I finished stripping it, I went ahead and rinsed with water and scrubbed at it to get any of the residue off. You can use an afterwash with Clean Strip, but it's not required. Just make sure you rinse really well. I also used a small wire stripping brush here just to get into the little details and crevices. So something that I didn't realize when I bought it was that the top was like a Formica or some kind of faux wood laminate material. So I needed to paint that. To make sure that my paint was going to stick to such a slick surface, I went ahead and sanded it with a 60 grit, just getting all that shine off. On the rest of it, I used a 120 grit. And this was one of the only 2 repairs that was needed on this dresser, which was just that this drawer rail needed to be screwed back in. And then there was one drawer that was kind of separating in one spot and needed to be glued back. Easy fixes on both. Since I was changing out the hardware, I wanted to go ahead and fill those holes in. And a good trick is always to put painter's tape behind those holes so that your filler doesn't spill out the other side. For deep holes like this, I love Bondo because it works so fast and you can sand it in like 15 minutes. I'm mixing it up here on a paper plate so you can see the consistency, but I really love using just like a baggie as like a piping bag and just cutting off the corner of that bag. Then you can just really control where it's going. Another reason to use the piping bag method is because once you add that cream hardener and start stirring it in, it's going to get hard really fast. Since it does dry so fast, I do recommend just working with it in small batches and just going back and mixing up more as you need it. Anytime you're using a filler, you also want to make sure that you overfill because you're going to sand that back. The next step in my process was to go ahead and sand all of the details around this piece that couldn't be sanded with the power sander, just to get in all of the crevices and such. And I believe I was sanding with a 180 grit here. This project reminded me that French provincial pieces are beautiful with all those curves, but there's a lot of hand sanding involved. And here's that one drawer that needed repair. Just wanted to pull those clamps off and check it, and it came out pretty good. This was my first time using the Titebond glue instead of like Gorilla Glue. I'm not sure which glue I prefer yet between the Gorilla Glue and Titebonds. If you've used both, you'll have to let me know what you think. And this is my golden retriever, Shotzi. He's reminding me that I need to take a break sometimes and give him cuddles. I did go back in with a second application of that glue just because I felt like I had another clamp that would work better on that area. So I wanted to use it instead and make sure that everything was really glued back together really well. After that, it was time to sand that Bondo off, make sure that everything was smooth. And the best thing you can do when you're checking a section like this and making sure it's smooth is just to close your eyes and run your finger over it. And if you are enjoying this video so far, I would love it if you would give this video a like, thumbs up, subscribe, turn on notifications, and follow me on Instagram. And this is plastic wood. This is just a wood filler that I use for shallower areas where it doesn't really need Bondo, but it does need something to be smooth. After sanding, I gave everything a once over with a damp microfiber cloth just to make sure everything was dust free, and then it was time to prime. This is the Zenisser 123 primer, so it's going to act as a bonding agent for the top. It's also just going to be a good all-around primer. And I used to roll on my primer, but now I spray it because it goes on so much smoother and so much easier. The next day I came back and gave it a scratch test. You definitely want to do this in a few different areas, but especially across a slick surface. Now, if you're following me on Instagram, then you know that I asked everybody to vote between blue and yellow for this piece. Blue won, so I wanted to mix up a few different blue tones because I wanted to do blending on this piece. So my main color was Seaside from Fusion. I mixed that with white. And I admit I messed up here. I was distracted and I got my color recipe mixed up. It was supposed to be 3 parts white and 1 part blue, but instead I did 3 parts blue and 1 part white. So that was fun for a few minutes while I tried to figure out why it was coming out so dark. After I had that sorted, I did another mixture that was Seaside Blue and Liberty. This was a 50-50 mix to give me a kind of navy blue tone. And I've said it before, blending is going to have an ugly duckling stage. Those first couple of coats, they may not look good, and that's okay. You just got to keep at it, sand between coats with a 220 grit or a 300, and just keep going. When you are doing a blended look, you want to keep it wet. You don't want to let it dry out because you want all of those colors to kind of mix when they are on your piece. So you want to have your main paint brushes, 1 for each color, keep those really moist. And then you want to have dry brushes that you keep wiping off on paper towels and such so they can control how the piece dries and they can do your blending. And the other color that I had added at the top here is a 50-50 mix of white and French eggshell from Fusion Mineral Paint. All of these paints are from Fusion. And once we get to that second coat here, you can kind of see the direction I'm going in and what it's going to start to look like. And once my paint had a day to dry, it was time for my favorite part. These transfers from Redesign with Prima, I had been waiting to use these ever since they released them a couple of months ago. And I was so excited for them. This is their Cerulean Blooms transfer. So once I had it planned out, I realized I've got these top 2 drawers that are curved and they hang over a little bit. And then that middle detail, so I had to work around those. And looking back, I should have started from the bottom because I had just a very straight line at the bottom. And it looked kind of funny. I figured out a way around it, but I wish I had started from the bottom. So since I started from the top, it turned into a lot of puzzle pieces. I did a lot of cutting, a lot of smaller sections with it. Once I had a section smoothed out and put in place, it was time to start burnishing it. When you're working with these transfers, slow and steady wins the race. You want to make sure that you burnish really well so that nothing gets messed up or torn or anything like that. And if you're a fellow DIYer, then you have some idea of how nerve-wracking this moment of trying to cut it into a smaller piece while it was already partially stuck to the drawer was. After burnishing, I took a very sharp knife around each drawer to cut it and make sure everything was in place the way it should be. Like I said, lots of little pieces, lots of nerve-wracking moments trying to get everything to line up. And you always want to go back with a soft cloth and burnish a second time. This is going to help get any air bubbles out, make sure everything is perfectly smooth. And I am paying attention to around each drawer here where I had cut with a sharp knife, just to make sure everything was laid down the way it should be. Since I did have that stark line at the bottom, I asked around what would be the best thing to kind of cover it up, and somebody suggested getting paint on a makeup sponge. This is a sealing sponge, but it worked the same way, and just being like a very fine sponge that would work and cover well. And it ended up looking really good in the end, so it was definitely a good tip. And my method ended up being to lightly brush the paint onto the sponge with an artist's brush, kind of dry it off on a paper plate and get some of the excess off on there, before lightly sponging it on where I needed it. And one more time, here is that before of this piece with the black and white paint and the broken glass hardware. And here is the after. I think it turned out absolutely amazing. It was everything that I envisioned, everything that I wanted it to be, and I am so proud of it. Despite all my worries about the transfer and all of the little pieces, it turned out so good. It pairs perfectly with all of those blues. And even though that top is not real wood, it still is going to be so durable for somebody. I also bought new French provincial poles for this piece, and I think they pair perfectly with it. If you enjoyed this video, it would make my day if you would like, subscribe, comment, and tell me what you think. And have a wonderful day.